Good evening, Galleon. This is Mayor Tom O'Leary coming from the City Hall. Appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. I'm sure this will be much more interesting than the pregame for the national championship game. We were talking before we started how this audience would be decimated had Ohio State not gotten gypped during that Clemson game. So let me just leave it right there and move into city matters. There are a couple of big projects that are going to have milestones this week that I think are worth informing folks on. They both involve highway projects and the city interacting with ODOT. First one that will come up in terms of legislation as well as construction is the resurfacing of Harding Way from the west end of town all the way through Galleon to 6th Avenue, and then the project will turn to the south and will resurface 6th Avenue to the city limits out there, somewhere in the McClure area, about halfway between Harding Way and Dawson. However, the rest of that project will include ODOT resurfacing all the way down to the county line. Those people who go south, say towards Candlewood or use 19 south on the east end of town know what a rough job ODOT did about a year ago when they tried to do kind of a chip seal on that, and it's been real problematic for us. So that project's a little bit complicated, but we've worked with ODOT on it. We will, meaning the city will have $450,000 roughly of a $1.3 million proposed budget. And so it will include the milling of all of Harding Way from the west side or east side all the way through uptown. We've included at our expense about $9,000 worth of pavement work that would involve what people think of as the square. Really the state route doesn't involve the parking in front of Dr. Nick's chiropractic shop or soon to be Park National Bank over on the other corner. So those four corners will be resurfaced. I think that will add to a lot more complete job, and over the long haul that'll be good for Uptown Galleon as well. One of the things that comes to mind right away when you think about, oh my gosh, they're paving uptown, have they considered the various festivals? And I think probably the largest, the one that impacts Harding Way the most, is certainly Oktoberfest. So I believe from seeing some postings on the internet that there's an upcoming organizational meeting of Oktoberfest here in the near future. But we've certainly worked with ODOT to have the contractor get that part of the project done before Oktoberfest, or postpone that part of the project until after the Oktoberfest. But what we know will happen is that in early July they'll sell that project. Contractor will be selected, contract signed and awarded, and then what you'll see is most of the rest of the summer and on in past Oktoberfest, you'll see Harding Way in some state of reconstruction. So it's a big project, an important project, and one that I don't believe we can get the word out about it too soon. I'm going to mention two more things before I talk about the other project and an upcoming public hearing. One is that tomorrow night, one of the pieces of legislation will be what's called consent legislation, in which we work with ODOT to consent to let them do paving within the city, and then the agreement, what spells out who pays what, is really spelled out in that legislation. And so that will be on the agenda tomorrow. No immediate urgency to get it passed, but I think it's good to get it going in the beginning of the year. In that breakdown, you'll see that we're responsible for a certain portion, actually a certain percentage of certain things that will be repaired, and then a larger percentage, honestly 100% of every expense that's above the top inch and a half that will be milled off and resurfaced. So the other day I was talking about this and I sounded like an ODOT apologist or a former ODOT person. I'll make clear about a couple of things. When it comes to state routes within city limits, under Ohio law, ODOT is at no obligation to do any resurfacing. In fact, they're not allowed to do maintenance within the city limits. And so what the state Department of Transportation has done for a long time in Ohio is provide funding for local governments so that the condition of those state routes within city limits, because of course once you leave the city you're back out on the state system, that the condition of those surfaces are approximately the same. So we will receive on this project somewhere in the neighborhood of 900,000 of federal and state fund combination to go with our 450,000 to make that 1.3 or so $1 million budget. Second thing I want to mention, just in passing, but clarify something that came up when there was a discussion about ice and snow and the city's either good job or not so good job around New Year's Eve. Stated by one of the commenters, and I quite honestly, I wouldn't use this medium if I didn't like it. So I'm not picking on Facebook or social media, but sometimes statements get made as if they're fact and they're just 100% wrong. One of the comments in the ice and snow debate, I only mention this because there are about 100 comments in this particular thread, was that the only reason the state routes got treated that day was because ODOT does that. That's just 100% false. So I want to dispel that nonsense and make sure for everyone who's listening, the fact of the matter is ODOT bears no responsibility for the maintenance or legally any responsibility for the ongoing upkeep of the surface. So state routes in the city are the city's responsibility, and that goes for everything, including pothole patching, but certainly it's instrumental, or not instrumental, but fundamental to our ice and snow route. So to the extent that the main streets in town got ice treatment on that day, it didn't have anything to do with ODOT, although they're great guys, and we're glad they're going to bring $800,000 to the city. Next thing I want to say is, and then we'll see if we have some questions. On Thursday of this week, it's going to be a public hearing up in council chambers, and it won't be. It'll be more of an open house public hearing. But the purpose of that meeting is to explain to anyone who has the time to come up and visit, meet with ODOT, meet with city officials. But the purpose of that will be to discuss the widening project, which I have the habit of calling the big project, the widening of Portland Way from Arby's or Carter Drive north to the Brant Road intersection. And that'll involve a number of temporary real estate takes, the widening and the necessary relocation of stormwater and other utilities will be the subject of that. And I think it's the best way to get any questions that you have about that project, or anything that you may have heard about the project, when it's going to happen, how traffic will be maintained during what is likely to be 2022 when the bulk of that construction will be done. So I'd encourage you to come. It's 5 to 7 o'clock. It's not as if you're late if you're not there at 5. It'll be much more of an open house, a brief presentation, and then an opportunity to have all your questions asked and answered. I would encourage everyone who has property along that corridor to try to be there, in particular those folks who have residents kind of from the Totally Classy, is that what that is? The Flick Car Wash?
Keep It Classy.
Keep It Classy, sorry George. Keep It Classy Car Wash south on either side. So I mean, I would say as an open invite, and I suspect that many of the people who go to Grace Point they will be concerned about how traffic will be maintained, and that's a good opportunity for those people or people from the church to come and get a good feel for how invasive the traffic will be, and how invasive the project will be, and how much that may or may impact traffic on Sundays or throughout the week there. Last thing that we're going to be taking some feedback on is that the engineer for the project is really going to try to find out if there would be any objections to nighttime work in the area that is north of Keep It Classy, Save a Lot in that area. So if you think in your mind's eye, there really are no residences from there to the end of the project. And there's certain phases of the project, certain pieces of construction that could really benefit by being able to work into the evening. So people who might have objections to the light or the sound that would result from that probably need to come and give us that feedback and see how much time would be saved, or what the expected savings in construction bidding costs if we were able to allow nighttime work. So a number of other things. I don't want to go on, as people who watch these know, I'll go into annoying detail about highway projects and maintenance traffic, but I think without getting into too much more detail tonight, I encourage you to come, and if you can't be there, there'll be detailed information on our website once we have the public meeting. So I think that'll be the source of both information and questions, and we're looking forward to that. So, I guess this Monday turns out to be highway night, highway construction night, but this is a particularly important week in getting those two major projects launched, getting legislation on the Harding Way project, and getting public information out on the widening of Portland Way. So, I'll stop there. Just a couple little miscellaneous things, unless we have some questions. Do we have any questions?
I've got 2 questions.
All right, let's do that, because I want to save the Christmas tree pickup information till last, because that is pivotal in some people's. If you haven't got your tree out by Thursday, I'll just go ahead and say it. Get it out. Get the information that it's out there so we can pick it up. We're done picking up trees on Thursday. And we really mean it this time. None of this calling, oh please, please. But that's when we would really like to shift over and expect to be in much more ice and snow and pothole patching winter mode. So work with us and get that information to us tomorrow and the next day. All right, questions.
All right, here we go. First one, while we were on the topic of 598, want to kind of stick with that thread. Dennis asked, any thoughts on using city bonds for the Pico building?
The Pico building's actually moving along kind of its own, with its own energy. The city has supported the project, certainly worked hard to get it acquired by a local owner, and now really are in a limited role in terms of development. Got a private developer. What the city has done is annex that for them, change the zoning so it lends itself to industrial park. And my understanding is that they are well on their way to applying for state funds to assist in 2 things. One is partially assist in the demolition of the old building, the old power equipment building, and then more importantly, as that area is freed up from the old building, the construction of I believe it's fair to say yet to be determined in terms of the number of square footage, but a modern spec building that can be used for manufacturing or warehousing. So the idea of the redevelopment of that property, kind of Dennis's question, very much in tune with that, but we're really playing a supportive role. And the way the state funds that they're going to apply for are available, they're available to private developers, and that's how that's going to go. What you'll see certainly is a combination of financing with some state money, some private investment, and then some local bank financing to put the project together. So I'm pretty excited about it. It's been a goal of those people who want to see jobs and industry brought to the community for, even before the mayoral system was voted back in. There were a lot of people knowing that we need to redevelop that. So I think that answers this question, doesn't it?
Yes.
Oh, and I can say one other thing, Dennis. Question you didn't ask, but it's important. City's going to be spending a few $1,000s on a traffic study. Oftentimes, those traffic studies are the local jurisdiction will make the developer fund it. I think it's important to get traffic information about what access points we'll need as that continues to develop, what kind of turn lanes and other, as they say, capacity improvements, small ones, we'll need in order to handle the traffic that we still expect will happen as a result of the commercial recreational developments that will happen in sort of the northwest quadrant of Branton 598. So we're going to have a study done to look at what type of growth and what we'll need in terms of infrastructure as that growth takes place. So it's another, I think the city again is still pro-development in the sense that we aren't going to tag that cost onto the private developer. We're trying to build a partnership with them that we're providing the infrastructure and they're providing a lot of the private investment for the actual factories, buildings, commercial development. So there's an over answer for you, Dennis, but I think I got the core of the question answered.
Okay, thanks, Mayor.
Yep.
And Dennis actually had a different question tonight, different topic here.
Okay.
He asked, did the state ship the liquor license to Tiffin? I think referring to
No.
the one guy.
No, that won't happen. There may be a liquor license issued up in Tiffin, but that will stand on its own two legs, wobbly or rock solid, sturdy. Those two legs. This request, from my understanding, is still pending, and I've heard nothing more about the grocery store. The way that it was awarded, the hard spirits part of the old liquor store is temporarily awarded to the Galleon Fresh Market, and my best information isn't very fresh. It's not very fresh, is it? Fresh Market. It's not very fresh. That they're still trying to work with the landlord to firm up the security for the operator. Then the operator, I understand where he's coming from. He does not want to move in, and while we all know about grocery stores because we've all shopped in one, very few of us have ever run one. So I've learned a lot in just trying to support bringing one into town. But there's an immense capital investment to stock the store and do all the things that were required by the health department to get the business open. We certainly, that business doesn't want to be in a position where they open it up and somebody shows up with some sort of lien against the building and throws the operation into some sort of legal limbo. So that's kind of where it's at, and that hasn't changed in weeks. But no, not to my knowledge, those liquor permits don't work that way. There's definitely one that needs to get assigned in Galleon, and that's only one of the many reasons that we've attached such an importance to getting a new grocery in town. Anything else?
Those are the only questions I have right now. If anybody else has anything, please submit it.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed. Those are, I know we can't compete with the national championship, but my hope is that this will get viewed, throughout the week, because the two highway projects, I think Matt and I both have sort of a vested interest in this live stream getting a lot of views, because for every view we'll probably save ourselves 3 or 4 questions about Harding Way this summer or fall. And certainly over the next couple of years, it'll save us a lot of questions about Portland Way, what's going to happen, how can people be informed. So, if you're watching, that's great. if the other way to look at this, Matt, is I was so thorough that I answered every possible question on those projects, which I know is not the case, and understand people have other things going. So I think one or two more things before we finish up. If you're out and around the old depot, that repair work is well underway, and what I'm really excited about that is as the first floor windows are replaced, I'm really looking forward to the amount of light that will come in, and how people who have been through the depot since it was the little mini mall for a few years, now 25 or 30 years ago, that they'll be in there. They probably won't remember it in the time before Mr. Meeks had it. So this will be, the windows will be replaced, a lot of light in there, and I think it just opens up, literally turns the light on about possibilities for redevelopment. So the city is going to reissue a request for proposal on that. Since you didn't ask, I'll go ahead and say, on seeing if we can bring in a private investor who can utilize some of the historic tax credits, both in federal and state tax credits. We, as a governmental entity owning it, any investment that we put in does not have tax credit value. As I'm often say, we don't pay taxes, we collect taxes. So we have really no tax credit to be earned or taxes to be avoided by investing in this next big phase. So I think as good as the building looks, and how much better it will look when this window project will be done, I think our chances of getting somebody to come in and partner to invest in the building and come up with a good commercial reuse, I think those chances have improved. And so we're going to solicit the investor community again. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago we did that, and the condition of the building is almost night and day. It's not quite that extreme, but it has come a long way. So, yep. Other than that, any other questions?
Yeah, I did have a couple of latecomers here.
Yeah, sure.
First one came from Mike. He asked, did the city tax on our license plate tags increase?
No. The if you just bought a tag or you got a license, I believe that was part of the gas tax increase, but I'm not 100% certain about that. You know, one of the things on Mike's question is probably not maybe the thrust of his question, but the gas tax, nobody likes paying an increased gas tax, myself included. Kind of funny how it is absorbed in the price, and it goes up and down so much from week to week. It's hard to know what's tax and what's a motor fuel price. But anyway, we really are in Galion. One of the reasons that we can afford this Harding Way project this year, as well as we expect to have a paving program on the other residential streets, areas like North Market, which everyone knows is in bad shape, particularly from Hetrick on out to the township line. Get that shaped up so it can take any kind of detour traffic that it'll experience the next year when Portland Way is widened. But we'll have a pretty large paving program in addition to the Harding Way project. And quite honestly, without that increase in gas tax, we probably would have had a pretty small residential paving program this year, and we would have been forced to borrow to be able to fund a project as much of a local investment as the Harding Way project's gonna. So we're gonna be able to stay debt free and do quite a bit of paving this year. So license plate tax did not go up, but your state fee may have gone up, and we'll get a small percentage of that. So.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Next question tonight came from Dennis.
Yeah.
He asked, what are your thoughts on what the city would or could offer a new small business? Well,
I think in addition to the standard property incentives really can assist a business more in construction of a new building or the creation of a building addition where there's additional property value. And what we have throughout the whole city is a community reinvestment area which has the effect of providing a tax reduction. I think projects, businesses that have utilized that I can think of off the top of my head, this CRA credit, are Hortons, seems to me Arby's had a small one. If I would have known the question was coming, I would have been at a little bit better recall. We've done 3 or 4. Duke got a small one. So if there's new construction, we can be really helpful in reducing the cost of taxes. Another fund that we have, and it's not a gigantic fund, it's in the neighborhood of $65,000, is a revolving loan fund, which has been around the city for a long time. It's really the money we used. It was a large fund, and we used that to assist in avoiding the old Central Hotel from collapsing 5 or 6 years ago now. But there's still enough money there for small startup businesses. In that case, or not startups, probably as much as an expansion, but that would be smaller existing businesses. And the worst thing about that particular fund is that we have to get sign off from the state, and so they're kind of, what, I don't want to say squirrely. Oh, never mind, I just did. They really don't like startups, and they're not fond of helping support restaurants. So we've been a little stymied in trying to use those funds over the last 3 years to help struggling businesses or some new ones coming in. I think beyond that, something that has 30 jobs or more, that would not be maybe a small business, but we have the ability, council has the ability to offer an income tax credit for those types of those types of projects. And Covert's $10 million expansion is an example of using a local income tax credit to try to incentivize the overall, in that case, expansion. So I hope that answers your question, Dennis. I think after I get off, I'll think of 1 or 2 other incentives. One thing that we've not done and really not had much discussion about is enticing businesses with free utilities. I hear that a lot of times. Give me 6 months free electric and I'll open up this or that. And we've really resisted that. We've got too many other commercial payers to be offering that as a startup incentive.
Okay, those are all the questions I have at this time.
Okay, stay tuned. I appreciate you being here this evening, and make sure the information, if you can, gets passed along the internet about the highway projects coming up. And over the next few months, to the extent you pay attention to city government, there'll be, I think you should, because there'll be a discussion about how the city can continue to replace its water infrastructure and continue to improve our wastewater treatment plants, 35 or 30 years old now, and do that with the current rate base. So there's going to be an active discussion at City Hall about what that boils down to are water and sewer rates. And so I think the more that we understand what improvements the state's requiring in those water utilities, meaning water and sewer utilities, and what we have to do to maintain our operation, we'll get a better feel for a topic that local government officials never like to talk about, and local taxpayers never like to shoulder, and that's increased utility rates. So I don't want to end on a killjoy, but it's something that's going to come up over the next few months, and so I guess it's a warning, but it's an invitation to get involved, to understand what's at stake. So anyways, having said all that, I appreciate you turning in, and we have a busy week. Look forward to seeing anyone who uses Portland Way very often, take 15-20 minutes, maybe a little longer, come up and understand what this project, what is involved in this project, and the extent to which we're going to try to maintain traffic and maintain safety while we're building a better platform for a safer and more commercially usable corridor out there on the north side of town, northwest side of town. So anyway, thanks a lot. Good night. We'll talk to you soon.